Today on the podcast, I'm joined by my syracuse.com colleague, Donna Ditota. Donna recently interviewed Jim Boeheim as he played in his charity golf event. We talked about their conversation about his decision to retire, how it went down, and why he decided now was the time to step away from coaching. Well, welcome back to another edition of the Inside Syracuse Basketball Podcast, and this is going to be a real fun conversation for us all. I have my colleague from syracuse.com, Donna Ditota, here today. And Donna, I want to talk to you about the experience you had just last week where you were able to go out to Jim Boeheim's charity golf event at Turning Stone, and you got to spend a good bit of time with the former coach and Hall of Famer. You know, a lot of times at these charity events, reporters get to come out and they'll get to talk to somebody for 5 or 10 minutes, and then off they go off to the golf course, and then you get to go write, something small. You got to go out on the course with Jim and his playing partners, and we'll get into them in a minute. But you got to go on the course with him for like 9 holes. And at times you guys were walking the course together. And I was just wondering, first of all, just what was that experience like for you?
Well, I made it known to him that I wanted to talk to him in depth, in kind of an in-depth way, and just talk about what's gone on in the last few months. And I talked to him after the Adrian's introductory press conference. And so I knew he was having this event at Turning Stone. So I talked to Mike Bristol, the tournament director of Jim's charity event, and said, hey, can I come out and talk to Jim? And he said, sure. And that's the extent of the conversation. Like, I had no idea what was going to happen once I got there. I just was told, be here around 12:15. And I got there and he just said, hey, let's go out on the course. And so Dennis Nett was there, our photographer, and Dennis and I got a cart. And then Jim just started talking. We started talking from the beginning. And then there were various points where, it just seemed, I kept having to turn off my recorder and turn it back on. And it just seemed, so then he just hopped on my cart, or I hopped on his cart, and I was just recording during that. And then just what happened. We just had a conversation for those 9 holes and various modes of transportation. We were walking or we were in the golf cart.
Yeah, Dennis got a great picture of you actually walking up a fairway with Jim, and you can tell by you had the reporter's pose there with your recorder out in your hand as you're walking.
Yeah,
you weren't holding a golf ball or a golf club.
No.
The neat thing is he talked about just the decision to retire, to step away. And he got into that a little bit more with you than he has with really anybody that I've heard him talk to, since Greensboro. And he actually said, the whole, the portal is getting these coaches out, or the NIL, and, Roy Williams and these people don't, Jim Boeheim doesn't want to deal with NIL and portal. But he said, and I'm going to quote, I don't think we've won enough games the last 2 years.
Right.
And that's the big reason why he decided that this was the time to step away. I thought that was really revealing. What was your reaction when he's talking to you like that?
Well, that had come up a bunch of different times during the conversation. He just said we weren't good. He kept saying we weren't good enough. And, I did ask him about the portal. I asked him about NIL. I asked him about all these things that are sort of on the college landscape right now that are sort of disrupting things in college sports. And he said, oh, it's none of that. He said, he's been doing it a long time. He said, he would have figured it out. They would have gotten players out of the portal. The school would have figured out its NIL situation, because we would have figured it out. There's been plenty of things that have come up over 47 years that we have figured out how to get around or get through. He said, we just weren't good enough. He kept coming back to that phrase, we weren't good enough.
Mm-hmm. And he also said, like, if he was younger, I think he
Right.
actually put the number at 50. If he was 50, you know what? He'd still like, okay, I still want to do this. But it was almost like an acknowledgement, really, for the first time ever, that like he acknowledged, like, I am 78 years old.
Right.
And maybe I'm not the guy to stick around and try to turn this thing around. And, I just thought that was just really, really revealing. And you don't always get revealing when you talk to Jim.
When you talk to Jim during the offseason, you get revealing.
We always talk about off-season Jim and in-season.
Yeah, he's a completely different guy. It went back to one point during the conversation. I said, you seem like retirement seems to be going well for you. You seem in a great mood. He goes, I'm always in a great mood. And I said, are you always in a great mood? And he did say, during the season, I'm not in a great mood. Because I kept coming back to him with him too, about how he's such a competitor in every former player of his has said over the years, like, this is the most competitive guy I've ever played for. This is like, this guy wants to win. He's all in on winning. And I said to him, you've been a guy your whole career who's been this fiery competitor. And it seems interesting to me that you would just say, well, why don't we try next year? Why can't we get better next year? Why can't I fix it next year? And he essentially said, you know what, maybe if I was 50, I think he said during another time during the conversation, well, maybe if I was 60, that would have been, I would have come back. I would have been wanting to tackle that. He said, but, I'm 78, and he said, basically, I've had enough. I've done I've won a lot of games, and that's it. I'm ready to go.
It didn't seem like he had any real regrets for staying on these past few years where it got difficult. I think a 33-32 record over the last 2 years. Missing the tournament both years, but he didn't say, "Oh, I should have stepped out sooner."
I asked him if he had wished that he had retired sooner, that he wished, and he said no. He said he's, and he says this to us all every year, Mike, and I know you know this. Every year he says, "I'm going to retire when I feel like I no longer enjoy it, when I don't like it." He said, 2 years ago I got to coach my sons, and he also said he really liked the team from this past year. He said he liked dealing with those. There's a lot of young guys. He liked kind of the instructional aspect of kind of trying to teach those young guys how to play. He just really likes and really liked, I should say, being a college basketball coach. And I think he said he did not regret stepping down sooner. He felt like, every year he sort of evaluates where he is and where his mind is and where his energy level is, and thought that this year, he said it was about midway through the season. But for me, and he said this wasn't necessarily true, but he said, for me, it was after that game at the Georgia Tech game in the Dome, when it took him a long time to come out to the post game. And that was as sort of defeated as I had ever seen him. And, but he said that it wasn't that game in particular. It was just like sort of the season as a whole. He just thought, he kept coming back to too, like our defense could not stop anybody. We couldn't do it. We just were bad at defense, and I think he just came to the realization, maybe he wasn't the guy to fix it. Maybe he wasn't the guy at age 78 to fix it,
Stepping away from the actual story that you wrote a little bit, but getting back to the golf course where you were with him, how did he hit it?
He hits it pretty good. He kept saying to me, like, he's hardly had a chance to play. He's had a fairly busy few months. He's been traveling around a little bit. He was going to go to New York the night after the golf tournament. And he was in New York yesterday too, to do something for the university. He's been traveled around a little bit, and he said he just hasn't had a chance to play that much, but he hit it pretty, he's got a very nice, easy swing, and he keeps it in play. There were a couple of times when he didn't hit a great approach shot, and he was like, oh, he did the same thing that we all would do when we hit a bad approach shot. But he hits it pretty good. He hits it straight, and he's still, I think there was on one of the holes, there was like the longest drive. There was a guy who was like the longest drive champion. And that guy like did a demonstration for the foursome, like hit it like I can't even remember. It was some sort of ridiculous like 380 or something like that off the tee. This guy hit it, and so then everybody got a chance to hit. And I think Jim drive was like 220 or 230, something like that. So he got it out there pretty good.
Absolutely. Now he was with the current coaching staff. Red Autry, the new head coach, is out there. Jerry McNamara, Alan Griffin's there, but Jimmy Boeheim was there.
Yeah.
I wondered what the whole dynamic, what was the interaction like between Jim and Jimmy?
I think they had a really good relationship. It was a very kind of fun father-dad thing, like every once in a while, Jimmy would say like, Dad, can you read this putt? Or what should I hit? Or what kind of, where should I aim? Or whatever like that. And Jim would sort of give his advice one way or other. And then Jimmy would like say, Dad, you got this. You're gonna make this putt, or what. It was just kind of a fun little, just a relationship that you would see with a father and son playing golf. And Jimmy also had his friend Ryan Rowland there, who's the brother of Jordan Rowland, the basketball playing brothers from West Hill. Yeah. And Ryan was clearly the ringer on the team. Ryan was really good. He's a pretty good player. And then Jim's friend was there as well, the guy that Jim also fishes with.
Graham Palm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the other son, and not Jimmy, but Buddy. Buddy wasn't there, but Buddy was in your story. And with a really, and Jim told you, it wasn't like you didn't call up Buddy from the golf course and get a quote, but Jim was telling you something that Buddy had told him. Tell us that story?
He just, it's at one point when we were talking about whether, he said that he had told his staff, if it gets to the point where we're not winning and it's not going well, that's the time I'm going to go. And then after that, I think I talked about how he's such a competitor. And he just said that at one point Jimmy and Buddy had said to him, Dad, you've proven all you have to prove. Like, there's nothing left for you to prove, which, sort of to me suggested, you can go, it's okay. Go ahead and retire and everybody's going to be okay.
Interesting that Buddy was saying. Did he give you a time frame for when Buddy said that?
He did not, and that is something I probably should have asked. He did not give me a time frame for that.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see whether it was December or February or sometime leading up to March. I've talked to a few of the former players that came back for that 2003 team reunion weekend. For senior day, it was the last regular season weekend, and those guys were all of them has said he didn't give them any indication that he was really thinking that this might be it. They were talking about, we're going to get guys, portal this, we're going to get Jesse back, maybe, so 4 or 5 days prior to that press conference in Greensboro, he's telling, guys from the 03 team, or at least giving them an indication, well, he'll be back next season. But he talked to you a little bit about not only that, but he talked to you about Greensboro as well. And that
he did talk about Greensboro.
The awkward press conference.
Yeah, I think he does have a little bit of regret about that. Okay. I think it's interesting that he said they just only recently figured out what his exact duties are going to be at Syracuse. Like, he has, it's taken that long from that March press conference until I think sometime this week, where they had finally nailed down and buttoned down exactly and precisely what he was going to be doing. Now, obviously, he was traveling around the country and traveling outside of the country to see Jimmy, and there was a lot going on. But I think he had said he'd wished that they had sort of buttoned down exactly what he would be doing. Once, if he didn't want, he had a 2-year deal that he had signed after the 2022 season, he said, and what he would be doing that extra year if he didn't coach, like what would happen. And I think he wanted certainly to do something with the university, and he wanted to sort of be a brand ambassador, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it sounds like fundraising, meeting recruits from all sports when they come on the campus for official visits. You walk by the Hall of Famer's office if he's there, and hey, listen, some kids may not know who Jim Boeheim is if they're a football recruit or a volleyball recruit or whoever, but mom and dad will, right? And
I think he said he's done that quite a bit anyway. He said he generally does that. He generally will, but like, if somebody has a big recruit that come in, they'll stop by his office and he shakes the hand of whomever the person is that is there, whatever that coach is recruiting.
Yeah, I've been at the Mello Center at basketball practices and seen football recruits and families walk through there, and I'm like, you're never going to see this gym again once you come here. But no, they walk through, and a lot of times it's to see Jim Boeheim.
Yeah.
And he's going to lecture. He's not going to teach, right? He's not going to teach at SU, but he's going to lecture.
When I talked to him, he wasn't entirely sure what he was going to do. And then he called me on, I think the next day, like on Wednesday, just to say, like, it's just going to be a lecture situation. He's going to occasionally lecture at Falk and Newhouse. And I was joking with him about Newhouse. I'm like, you're going to go teach reporters how to do reporting? Like, what's going to happen? And he's like, no, I'm just going to talk to them about, like, if they have questions that they want to, how they're going to address coaches or whatever. We joked a little bit about that.
Hasn't he been lecturing reporters for 47 years?
Yes, he has. But that's all over. That's done.
The other thing he talked to you about his future, plans is, he talked about this whole thing about media. He's been dropping hints about, maybe I'll do something in the media. He was a little bit more specific with you. He ruled some stuff out. Can take us through that.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to. I think he may have a little bit of contract left with Galaxy. I'm not sure what his Galaxy situation is, but he said he's not. If he does have contract requirements for Galaxy, he's not going to do it during basketball season. He doesn't want to do any kind of commentary about Adrian or the coaches or the players or how they're playing, or he doesn't want to do any of that. So he's not going to, if he does do his Galaxy thing, he said he's not going to do it during the season. It's going to be, maybe he'll do it in the fall or what have you, fulfill his Galaxy obligations. But he's thinking about it. He said he's not entirely sure what he's going to do. Maybe doing a couple of college basketball games on the radio a week, or maybe doing a TV game here or there. I don't think he wants to do like a ton of it, but I think he wants to. I think he just wants to keep engaging with the basketball community. He wants to keep engaging with this. I mean, he loves the game, and I think he likes talking about the game, and it's a chance. He's going to get paid to talk about the game, so I think he finds that to be appealing. Now, whether or not he, how much he does of it, I don't know.
I would be really intrigued. I would definitely want to listen to Jim Boeheim give color commentary on a game.
Well, it's interesting because I said to him, are you going to be critical, or are you going to be like super opinionated about it? And he's like, well, I'm not going to like criticize the players or criticize the coaches. He said, but I might say something like, maybe they could go into the big guy a little more here, or maybe they could play a little zone here, or maybe they could press, or, but he said he doesn't imagine that he will be doing too much criticizing of players or coaches.
I always thought he'd be great for studio, because if they could cut back to him at halftime, you and I both have talked about this many, many times. He sees the game in real time. He can break it down and see what's going on. People talk all about the time, oh, he doesn't make a job, he just plays the zone. I'm like, you don't understand what's going on sometimes within that zone or what he does. I would love to hear like his quick comments even at halftime.
Yeah, and again, I don't know how much he's going to do. I think he's going to investigate like what will be required of him. And he said he'll have to figure out how to do his homework on it and figure out like what exactly, how the job works, basically.
He also, since Greensboro, you and I have both been told by different people, different theories about how that whole thing went down. Some folks have told me, oh, he wanted to come back, but certain people at the university didn't want him to, and they had to, and that's why it got awkward. They had to negotiate this whole thing, but he really did not. He didn't support that theory, and you were with him for a very long time out there on the course.
He said, one of the first things he talked about was, he said there's a couple of misconceptions about what happened, and he said, this is what he said. He said, people think that I was forced out, and he said that's not true.
Okay.
And he said that he had come to the conclusion at some point or during the season, again, like we've talked about, that he just he just wasn't doing the job that he had hoped he could do.
And talk about Adrian and the new it's the old staff, but they're all going to be like stepping up of running the ladder, and of course new assistant Brendan Strawn. But did he talk about the new coaching staff and what he thought of them, or what's happened since the end of the season with the recruits and the portal?
Yeah, I mean, he said he thinks that Adrian did a great job in the portal. He said that, in fact, when he addressed, so before he went out on the golf course, he addressed, as Jim is wont to do, and we've all seen him in the gym joking Jim phase of his addressing people before a tournament or before some kind of event. He's funny and he's very engaging, but at that point he did say to the people who were gathered there, and Adrian was there, Alan Griffin was there, Jerry McNamara was there, and Peter Corsiniti was there. And he did say, that he thought Adrian had gotten off to a great start. He hit it, killed it in the portal. And, he's been very, very positive about what he thinks Adrian and what the staff can do. And he said, they've got some new ideas, and, he seemed, enthusiastic about what the new regime, so to speak, is going to bring this year.
But he's not going to attend games.
He's not going to attend games. No.
And beyond that, he talked to you about other stuff too, like, being around practices and stuff like that. He's going to try to keep away, right? And let Adrian be the head coach.
Yeah, I think the only thing he's going to do is, I asked him, well, you still have relationships with some of the players on the team. You coach them for a year, and these guys, and obviously the guys on the staff. The people who work in the basketball office. And he said that almost every time that he goes into the office, his office is in the Lally complex, which is sort of next door, I guess, to the Mello Center. And he said invariably he'll end up wandering over to the basketball office and chat up with all of his friends over there and just hang out there. Plus he's comfortable. And he said he considers the three assistant coaches like his sons. He said, I've known them. He said, I've known Adrian since he was 17 and now or 16 or 17 and now he's 50 years old. He said he's known these guys for a really long time. He just likes to go over and, chat them up and hang out there for a little bit. But he said he's not going to do any kind of, he doesn't want to be like a visible presence anywhere on the, where, you and I talked about where the cameras could catch him, making some kind of, whatever. I just think he just doesn't want to be like hovering over the program. He wants to make a clean break of it. In fact, he told me that he had a conversation with Mike Krzyzewski, and Mike Krzyzewski had gone to one game this year, and he told Jim that he regretted it because all of the attention was on Mike for that game, and Jim just doesn't. He said he just doesn't want that. He doesn't want that to happen.
Yeah, that one game that Mike Krzyzewski went to was when Mike Bray, who had announced his retirement at Notre Dame. Notre Dame came down. Bray's a former Duke assistant. It made sense in real time. I thought that Krzyzewski would go and be there for his former assistant, but Coach K regretted it. He told Jim, huh?
That's what he said. He said he just because there was so much attention paid to him during that game, and he just felt like he's done, he's retired, and let's move on. Let's all move on with our lives, basically.
Well, then it's going to make it really hard for the university to figure out a way to get him to a game so that they can honor him in some way, because because he retired after the season and on the road, they haven't had a chance to do that. I mean, how do you think they do that?
I mean, I think he will come back for that. I mean, if they have I think I can't imagine that they would not have a Jim Boeheim day at the Dome. I mean, the guy has been the head coach for 47 years. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's won, I mean, I can't imagine. He's been the face of Syracuse basketball for essentially as long as Syracuse basketball has been a thing. So I can't imagine that they wouldn't have him back for something, and he'll go to that. I mean, there's no chance he won't go to that. I don't know how he's going to work out the logistics of will you watch the game, or I don't know any about that. But I think just generally speaking, I mean, if he has to be there for a game, he has to be there for a game. But I mean, I think generally speaking, he doesn't want to go. And he also said that he and Julie are going to travel a lot. They want to do a lot of traveling. I think he said they probably will live in Syracuse for 8 or 9 months, split their time between their house in central New York and their house in Skaneateles for 8 or 9 months. And he said, then we're going to travel for a couple of months. So I don't know how much he'll be around in the winter too, but he did say, if he's around and if the games are on TV, he's going to watch them. Sure.
I would imagine he's going to be watching all of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, he went over to see Jimmy play in the Czech Republic after the season. If Jimmy's back in Europe next season, wherever he is, and we don't know where Buddy will be next year.
Right. And he just said he's going to go to Vegas because Buddy's going to be playing in the summer league this year, the NBA summer league. So he's going to go to Vegas to spend a little time there to see Buddy, and he'll watch some basketball there too.
Well, I just thought it was a real interesting and revealing story. I'm glad you were able to go out there, and how cool must have been. Although I got to sympathize with you, and this is a reporter's lament. To be able to go out to a place like Turning Stone and walk the golf course but not be able to play, that's
okay. It was okay. It was just, I kept having to apologize to his playing partners because he'd be in the middle of a conversation about something and they'd be like, Jim, Dad, you got to hit, it's not, can you get moving here? So I had to apologize to his playing partners. I'm sorry, I'm disrupting the flow here of this tournament, but no, I didn't want to play. I mean, I've been out there. I had covered the PGA Tour when it was out there. I think I covered Dustin Johnson's first PGA Tour win when it was out at Turning Stone, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. And I didn't want to get out there and play.
Yeah, I played out there one time in a media event, and the course is way too good for my game. So it was probably pretty good that you went. But I tell you what, if Jim Boeheim happens to be listening to the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast, now that you've let Donna out on the golf course, I'll go fishing with you, Jim. We'll spend a day on the water. We'll see who can land the biggest fish, and we'll do another interview. So there you go. That's my plea to Jim Boeheim. We'll see if he wants to, take me fishing. That would be cool. I'd rather do that than golf because my golf game is poor.
I gotta say, he talked a lot about fishing, and I was like, how is it possible that I have known you for 30 plus years? I never knew you were a fishing guy. How is that possible? But he is apparently a huge guy. He loves fishing.
Oh yeah.
I do not love fishing, so I don't get it, but whatever.
I tell you what we'll do. And if Jim is listening, or if Roosevelt Bowie's, we're going to put out the invitation. Roosevelt Bowie can take Jim Boeheim and me fishing because Roosevelt Bowie is the master fisherman. So there you go.
Jim says he only goes out with master fishermen. He goes out with guys who know how to fish, he says.
That's the key. Yes, so, they take you to the fish. Like I used to do with our former outdoors guy, Dave Fagura.
Yeah.
So anyway, Donna, this was really cool and great story.
Thank you.
It was awesome. And to Dennis Nett, man, he got some great photos. Folks, if you haven't seen it, it's going to be somewhere here, either in the syracuse.com realm or it was in the Sunday Post Standard. So, Donna, we will see you soon. But thanks for coming here on the podcast.
All right, Mike.